All right, welcome back to another episode of the Carbon Cardboard podcast covering Formula One and the Formula One card hobby. I'm your host, Bryan, Q3 Cards, joined as always with my good friend Scott from the F1 Castle. Been a while, Scott. I was away, you were away.
Yeah.
Mercedes is back.
In a big way. One of their drivers gets pole, one of their drivers wins.
I see you repping got your Mercedes shirt on.
I got my Lewis Mercedes.
I'm actually repping an old The Cards Formula shirt tonight because I was gonna wear my Mercedes shirt, but I wore it a couple days ago. It was dirty. So, anywho, wow. So we missed talking about some like the best races of the season. We probably won't cover too much of the Lando Verstappen drama. It'll probably come up in when I start peppering you with some of these questions and stuff. But wow, that wow is all I got to say. What a season! I think your Castle call from before the season. I can't remember if we talked about this on one of these episodes or if it was something that you talked about on Fanatics Live or on Instagram. Because you had predicted 4 different constructor winning and 6 different drivers. We're almost there. Actually, we are there.
We are there. Now I'm worried that it's actually not going to be enough because there probably will be more than 6 drivers, I think, at this rate.
Let's just get into it. There's just so much to talk about. I don't even want to... Lewis Hamilton, this is going to be a very Lewis Hamilton centric episode. And it's fitting, Scott, because we haven't really talked about him all that much. I mean, one of the all-time greats, tied with Michael Schumacher at 7 World Driver Championships, 945 days in between victories.
Unbelievable. That's actually crazy to think about, especially for someone who's won so much in his career. Like, I'm sure it's some of that, in some of those wins and during those seasons, it's just like, oh, it's another win. Like, it doesn't even feel, it's like what Max was feeling last year. But now, I mean, you could see it, right? You could see it. You could hear it in his voice. I mean, he was having tears of joy. It was awesome. It was a very unique and special moment for the entire sport, I think. For one of your greats who kind of, has a, extremely controversial loss, and then goes through just an up and down. Like 22 for him was not great, right? And then 23, not that much better. And for the first half of this year, George had gotten the better of him, right? Especially in qualifying. And here in Silverstone, George did get the better of him in qualifying, right? George was on pole, but Lewis got it done in the race. As he so often finds a way to do, he got it done at Silverstone for the 9th time.
It's just incredible. There's so many superlatives that we could talk about with how great this was. Tears in his eyes. Him and Bono, you could tell. I think Bono was probably even more excited than he was. his race engineer, for anybody that's not aware of that. But if you look back, even like you mentioned, Scott, with those 2 struggling years in 22 and 23, he still was on the podium.
Yeah. Always,
and those are his 2 worst finishes since 2014. Like he's done no worse than 3rd at this circuit. Obviously, home race. It just like the champion comes out when he's there, and I feel like we'll talk about it in a little bit. Since the last time we talked about the surprise win for George in Austria when Lando got a DNF and Max finished down the grid because they both collided and George just happily passed on by. This one was on merit. Like obviously Max had some floor damage in qualifying, and that may have impacted him, but they fixed the car before the race. I don't think that this is the same dominant Red Bull. The RB19 is very different from the RB20.
Yep.
And game on for the season, just when we thought Lando was the championship contender to Max.
No, it's true. And I mean, I think, like the only reason Max was on the podium, and especially, was in second, he only finished a second and a half away from Lewis, was because they got the strategy perfect, like down to the lap, the tire, like Red Bull in Max's hands, with the strategy calls, they played that race perfectly and they still couldn't get the win. Right. And I think, definitely on merit, right? 100% on merit. Like it's the way racing goes. McLaren didn't do the best strategy here. So like there's an argument for like McLaren should have had a 1-2 here. But listen, that is racing. And it's not like it was some crazy, DNF or threw it all away. Like they just didn't make the right strategy calls. And Mercedes did. And part of racing is not only, going out there and doing the fastest lap time, but it's being a complete team, making the right calls, the driver trusting in the team, or, influencing the team to go a certain direction with the strategy. And Lewis and Mercedes got it right. And Lewis drove a perfect race, right? I mean, at the end, Lando was on the softs too, but, Max was catching and overtaking eventually Lando faster than he was catching Hamilton, right? Hamilton did a good job of elongating the length of that last soft stint and like the tire life. I think he did a really good job there, and Max was coming. I mean, he was coming. So
we're basically at the half point. We have 2 more races before the summer break, Scott. So Hamilton's now 1 point away from Russell. Sergio is tumbling down the standings. We won't get too much into him and all the rumors circulating. It's so fun, Scott, to have so many drivers and teams in contention now. And this is a sports card podcast. I mean, it has to warm your heart as a Formula One fan, and especially as a Formula One card breaker, consigner. It feels like everybody is just reinvigorated with Lewis Hamilton. Like you're seeing so many cards of Lewis Hamilton surfacing on Instagram, and so many good people. It's just like that thing. Like everyone liked that. It just. It was great to see, and I feel like the hobby, Formula One fans in general, I think everyone loved that. Everyone wanted to see Lewis back on the top step, but like absolutely. I feel like our card collectors have just been waiting for this moment to just be like, hey, look at all my cool stuff. I still have some really cool Lewis Hamilton cards here.
Yeah, and you know what? That's what I love too, because one of the things that I really try to instill in folks, here in the F1 Castle is, be collectors first. Like obviously there's going to be some degree of, chasing a big hit and like, whatever cards are not part of your PC you're selling off. But what I love to see was it wasn't just a mass sell-off. It wasn't like, oh, he won, sell all your Hamilton cards like you see so often in so many other sports. And honestly, when other drivers won, when Sainz won, there's a lot of Sainz cards hitting the market. When Leclerc won, even in Monaco, saw a lot of Leclerc cards. But to your point, it was a lot of people showing that they have a big Hamilton card or showing their favorite Hamilton card from their PC. People weren't just like running to sell them. It was a bit of, hey, we all love Lewis and we're happy to see him win. And yeah, I think it's a great thing, not only for Formula One, but also for the Formula One card hobby. And I know people are already so excited for that card. And it's going to be hitting in the 2025 set. Right, because the 2025 set, which, by the way, will be Lewis in a red Ferrari suit, that is going to have not only his Grand Prix winner, but his Grand Prix driver of the day, Mercedes cards, in that 2024 set. So yeah, it's going to be Lewis is going to be an expensive spot.
And there's going to be a celebration variation of that. He's going to be draped in the British Union flag, and it's going to be great. On screen here, we were talking about that with the team standings as well. Mercedes has now put themselves in contention. They're still a ways back from the other teams, but Ferrari's hanging on, but going in the opposite direction. It just, like you mentioned it, Scott, it really feels like McLaren is just shooting themselves in the foot. Like, they've got the car, they've got the two drivers.
Yeah.
I mentioned it a couple episodes ago. They need Hannah Schmidt. They need somebody like her on the pit wall making the right calls. And it just feels like they've got that magic 8 ball. They're like, Lando, what would you want to do? And with GP and the pit wall for Red Bull, it's like, all right, Max, we're gonna pit you here. We're gonna put you on hards. It's like they're telling him what to do. Like, obviously they would take his input, but they knew that their car was gonna be better on hard tires than soft. I think if they had gone soft as well, I think they probably would have fallen even farther back. It just, it was, they're good for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, you got to think too, like Red Bull and Mercedes over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years have been the best two teams. Mercedes for a long time and Red Bull recently, right? They've been the teams that are winning consistently. And that doesn't just happen by happenstance, right? They're making the right decisions. And I think what we see so often with Ferrari, and now we're seeing with McLaren, is that they're not always in the position to win. So when they are, they're kind of fumbling a little bit, right? I think like one of the things I was talking about the other day when I was streaming is I feel like McLaren is almost like playing scared right now. They're like, oh, whoa, we have like the fastest or one of the fastest cars. We're in the lead. Like, whoa, play it safe. And like, they're not making the decisive calls, right? If they had pit the lap, Hamilton and Max and everyone else had pit, they would have won that race probably. Or, you never know, but like they would have put themselves in a much better chance to do it. And so I think it'll obviously be a learning moment for McLaren. They'll have a hell of a debrief. And I think they'll come back stronger for it. Like, it happens. But I think you're right. I think the next half of this season, right? Because we're not quite at the summer break, but we're halfway through races, basically is going to be amazing. I mean, we are going to see 3 or maybe 4, teams with a legitimate chance to win every single week. Like, we're going to go into a race and it's not, oh, Max, unless someone puts Topps Chrome cards in his brake ducts, like Max is going to win. Like, it's not that anymore. Right. And it seems so recent and almost at the same time, like so far away, like when Max was just race after race after race after race. And I think I've seen the community reinvigorated, right? Not just card community, but Formula One in general, right? Like no one likes, my thing I hate the most in the world is when something gets spoiled for me, right? If someone tells me the winner before I watch something. And I feel like a lot of people felt like Max was always going to win. It's already spoiled. Why watch, right? And now you have no idea who's going to win, which makes it so much fun. So yeah, I'm really excited for the rest of the season and next year as well.
And we've got the triple header points here, and you're seeing the last 3 races where Hamilton's right there, Piastri's right there. Obviously, Norris would have been higher without the DNF. Russell. Ferrari's going in the wrong direction. Hulkenberg has been 2 straight P6s. Like, he has been impressive. Good. Like, yeah. I'm very intrigued to see like what that eventually turns into with Audi, because obviously he's, the car is developing with him. It's surprising to say that Haas is developing their car and it's performing.
Io Komatsu, right? I mean, it's the new generation of, I love Gunther, He's a legend, but yeah, it seems like something's been unlocked, with them not only just having a better car in general, but like you said, being able to add performance. I mean, that's the thing that they've always struggled to do. They've kind of started the season with, oh, decent car, decent qualifying car, but like they just struggle to add performance throughout the year. And right now we're seeing it. We are seeing it.
Pop quiz, Scott. What's been your favorite race of the season so far? And you can't say all of them.
Oh man. I honestly I think you can't look past Silverstone because while I was there and I loved seeing Lando get his first win in Miami. I think that one would be a vote for a lot of people. Um that wasn't the same type of race, right? Like there was a late safety car that kind of opened up the window but then there was a pretty big gap between Lando and Max. It was really just the edge of your seat kind of, oh, nothing happened to Lando's car kind of a thing. But Silverstone had it all. I mean, how many lead changes do we have? Like 4, 5 or so? I mean, and it had some of the best wheel to wheel racing between so many different drivers. And it was actually crazy because I was coming back from Punta Cana and I'm in this airport with 3G. Okay. I'm watching F1 TV. I'm watching the race on 3G. And it's like going in, going out, and watching those battles. Like when both Russell and Hamilton were fighting each other when it started coming down a little wet, and then Hamilton passes Russell, and then they both go off the track, and Lando comes through. Like, oh, dude, I was going nuts. I was going insane. So I think Great Britain had it all throughout the whole race, right? There was just so much going on. And that's what you're going to get with changeable conditions. That's why races with changeable conditions are always the best. And that doesn't mean a wet race, right? Where they're all on inters the whole race and then eventually it dries a little bit and they go to slicks. What I'm talking about is like you're starting on, an intermediate or a slick, and then you're changing back, you're changing again. And that's what Silverstone gave us. We saw the rain come in, go away, come back, and that dry line ultimately at the end was there for them to put in some really fast laps. So yeah, I think it's got to be Great Britain. Like even Lewis winning aside, which is legendary, I think just like the actual racing in the race all throughout was amazing.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I would give and not an asterisk. I would say Austria was really
Runner-up.
exciting runner up there with just the wheel to wheel. It went a little too far with Lando and Max. I'm glad. I'm actually kind of glad we didn't have a chance to talk about it because I think level heads prevailed. I think Lando was very passionate about how angry he was of what happened. It was a racing incident. They both were at fault, probably near 50-50. But it was George winning and just kind of, like I just said, kind of just like being at the opportune moment at the right time, just driving. And it's just like, it made me think, I'm like, we've got a season on our hands. It's like a fourth different constructor, at the time, a fifth different race winner, now 6. I mean, Checo, get on the top step. I mean, you have to Piastri. To me, if you were going to ask me who I think would be the 7th at this point, it's got to be Piastri. Like once he just gets it figured out and he doesn't like, it broke my heart for Piastri to stay out, not double stack when they needed to, and then he was only like 5 seconds ahead of Lando on Lando's out lap. I'm just like, they were talking about it on the broadcast. Like they threw away his race, and like,
yeah, that was tough to watch, right? I mean, Oscar could have been the one who won this race, and I was actually talking about it with Ben the other day, and you think like they completely threw away his race, right? Why not? And this I go back to, like, I feel like they're just playing scared. Why not take a gamble and put Oscar on those mediums a couple laps earlier? Like, go in before Max, before Hammy. Maybe he's got one tough lap to struggle with, but then they're up to temperature, and he's cruising through. I mean, he could have won, and he could have at least given Lando data, right? While Lando's going around, it's like, okay, why don't we bring him in early, give the data of how the slick tire is going to Lando, and then they can use that. But just didn't happen. And yeah, just very briefly touching on the Austria Max Lando, at the end of the day, right? I think the incident itself, the one where that ultimately caused Lando to DNF and Max to have to go back to the pits. I think it was on Max more so, predominantly, right? I mean, Lando probably could have moved a little bit more, but he's supposed to be given a car's width. They gave Max a penalty. I think it was a deserved penalty, and you kind of move on. I mean, unfortunate that Lando had a DNF. Like, ultimately, I think that's the big thing. And maybe if Lando, and he even said this, had not driven his car so angrily to the pits, maybe he's able to continue, and then he finishes sixth behind Max, right? Because Max is able to go. So, but it was unfortunate, but it was really cool to see George win. And I remember actually talking to my wife, Queen of the Castle, in the kitchen the other week, and I remember saying, all we need is Hamilton, Piastri, or Perez to win. Like, one of those three, and I'm gonna be at my prediction from the beginning of the season. And sure enough, next race, bam, Hammy gets the win. So yeah, at this point, I think I'm gonna be wrong, because I think we're gonna have seven. Maybe I can caveat it and say that I said we'll have at least six.
I'm pretty sure I overheard you say that it was at least six. We can edit the audio back afterwards.
We'll run the tape. But I think Piastri, honestly, I would not be surprised if Piastri got multiple wins throughout the rest of the season. So yeah, I'm excited, and hopefully Perez can get it together, because the way it's heading, I mean, we're looking at a Max first place and a Perez eighth place in the championship, and I don't want to see that. I think hopefully the summer break will come at the right time for him.
Yeah, we want to wish him the best, and he has a lot of fans out there. You never like to see a driver struggling, and can't even really speculate on what's going wrong. But he has proven in the past that he can do it. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and honestly, this just goes back to think of all the massive Hamilton fans that are in the F1 community, who put their time, their money, their resources, and love into collecting Hamilton cards. Think of how tough of a time it was in 2022 and 2023, and like being this season. It's just like, it sucks. So now that he's gotten a win, he seems to be, reinvigorated and, going towards the top. Like, hopefully we can see that for Perez, right? Because I know this is a tough time for Perez collectors, because it's just every media publication is just like piling on all over the place, right? So hopefully he comes out and does well in Hungary. Hungary should be a decent track for them. I actually think it'll be a pretty good track for Ferrari. But yeah, I'm sure the summer break couldn't come at a better time for him to just relax, come back reinvigorated.
I got to throw one last curveball question at you here, Scott. Talking about pure speculation. Do you think Lewis regrets his decision with what he knows now? Is there any way for it to be undone? Like, we're waiting for all these shoes to drop. Like, wouldn't it be the cherry on top of the sundae that is the 2024 season that Lewis is just like, I'm staying? Like, pulls a LeBron and just says, I'm staying. Like, oh man, everyone, you can't blame him. But on the other hand, like, with James Allison back, and it seems like they've figured out something with the car recently. There's been a ton of articles, so we won't get into depth about that. If you're on the on the technical side and all that, the stuff, I love reading about that, because I'm learning a lot about that. But you're not listening to this show for us to talk about that stuff. But yeah, it just seems like it would be nice for him to stay. Especially as excited Toto's been.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I don't think he will, right? I think ultimately, especially with such a high profile move to Ferrari, and I'm sure, Obviously, we'll never know exactly details of the contract and everything, but obviously there's a lot of money involved. Ferrari is a brand that, if he's looking to, propel his brand after he's done racing, being associated with Ferrari is a pretty attractive proposition. And he'll always kind of be associated with Mercedes as well. So it kind of just adds another team. So I don't think it's going to be undone. Do I think he might regret it? Maybe. Maybe. He might. He'll never publicly admit that ever. But maybe. And again, this is just one moment. So maybe he regrets it right now, you know. But who knows where we'll be at the end of the season. Maybe Ferrari will come out with another really good upgrade and they'll be the one with a really good car next year and he'll be the one sitting in it. So it's too early to tell. Maybe he had a little second guessing, as he was tearing up on the podium. But yeah, I think he ends up going to Ferrari for sure.
All right. Curveball question over. All right, let's talk about some hits in the castle.
Yeah, so Mr. Jeff Crypto, who's just at this point going absolutely insane, specifically on 2023 Sapphire. So we ran 11 cases personal. You gave away Lando Norris on all of them. And Ben got Jack Doohan, which over 11 cases was 1 aqua portrait, 2 aqua cars. Sorry, Ben. I'm so sorry. But, it's absolutely insane. I don't know. The cases I have, just Doohan doesn't exist in them. But what does exist is our current F2 championship leader, Isaac Hadjar portrait 1 of 1. So we pulled the Behrman 1 of 1, which was easily the biggest F2 card. This might be the next biggest. Hadjar 101. I mean, he's a Red Bull Junior. He's doing really well. He's already got as many feature race wins in 3 as anyone did last year, any individual driver. So he's likely to have more than anyone last year. And he's doing pretty well. So, I mean, if he can keep it together and stay above, Paul Aaron and Zane Maloney, who's in 3rd, he could easily win the championship and then, potentially, who knows, maybe move up to a V-carb seat or do a year as a reserve driver and then move on. But yeah, so that was probably the biggest pad we hit of the night. Then we hit a Mick Schumacher, which is great because he only has 1 card in the entire set. Because in Chrome, he's got the reserve driver autos, but in Sapphire, he has the 1 card, which is driver of the day, Austria 2022. And we hit his 1 of 1. So now that spot has taken a big hit because we got a big hit. So yeah, Mick Schumacher, that's a really cool one. That's going to be headed your way, actually. Felipe Drugovich, same situation as Mick, his only card in the set. And we hit his 1 of 1. So that's a really cool one. I think there's a couple people interested, but I know someone had picked up the Superfractor from Chrome, so he's very interested to pair it here. But yeah, so there's our 3rd 1 of 1. That was actually the first one we pulled of the night. And then we talked about this earlier. Isaac Hadjar, in 1st in F2 championships, got to hold off Paul Aaron and Zane Maloney. And we hit Zane Maloney's 1 of 1 portrait Pat Paraja as well. So now we've hit Behrman, Hadjar, Maloney. They're the top 3 in terms of value. Maybe Doohan eclipses Maloney or Hadjar just because he has so many fans. But we basically hit the top 3. Like, we're just killing spots left and right in 2023 Sapphire. But honestly, there's not that much product left. So I don't know how much longer folks will be breaking it for. We're going to have to go back to Chrome or another year. And then the biggest red. So those are the 4 pad 1 of 1s we hit. The biggest red of the night was easily a Lewis Hamilton image variation, red out of 5. That one also going to be heading to Q3.
I just love this card. It's grown on me.
So good.
I actually recently picked up this in the Chrome, just the Chrome variation of this.
Yeah.
Actually, very fortunate to grab a couple Lewis Hamilton cards before he won.
Pre-boom.
Pre-boom, which, as we'll talk about, his market is now back to where it was just very quickly. It's funny how the tide will turn. I feel like we've talked about this before too. It's hard. It's hard as a collector just because you want to collect a winner. You want to go out. But it's also one of the worst times to go buy because you're going to be paying a premium. None of us have a crystal ball. We're never going to know exactly what's going to happen. But it's just like with, not that this is meant to be any kind of investing advice, and take it with all a grain of salt because we're a bunch of hacks. But going back to the point you made about 10 minutes ago about being a collector first, you kind of know when you can get a bargain or a value. And if you're collecting as you go along, like some of those like good deals will pop up. And if you're able to pounce, regardless of the parallel, I mean, we talk about some of the really, really big hits that are really hard to hit. But the cool thing about, especially the Topps Chrome sets, and I know that you've talked about this before too, with like collecting the mini diamonds, like at a $2.99 worldwide, it's still fairly rare if you think about it. If a lot more people started collecting Formula One cards, it would be harder to obtain. But on the other hand, they look great. I mean, you still have the same photos as everybody else, but that's when like all the rarity and stuff kicks in. So
yeah. This card, looking at it right now too, really just why did they not do purple variations this year? Like it would look so good in purple, Oh man. But it's a beautiful card. I mean, obviously it looks amazing in red. And I think it'll look even better in red next year. I think all the red Lewis Hamiltons will see a bump next year just from him being a Ferrari. But yeah, so that was the biggest hits we've gotten lately. Last night.
What have you done for me lately? So, all right. So, this was very, we got some good news today for one of our people in the Formula One card hobby with F1 Collector Jim. And I feel like we've talked about this hit previously when we were talking about one of the bigger hits of some of your Sapphire 2020 breaks. It's always good, Scott, to get the upcharge email from PSA, because although it really stinks to pay in this instance for this card $799 to grade it. It's I won't get on my soapbox of their business practices. I mean, PSA is the number one in the game. They're for a reason, but you can't tell me it doesn't cost the same to grade a $20 card as it does one that's valued at, what in their eyes, around 25,000 or more.
Oh, easily. So
Lewis Hamilton 2020 Topps Chrome Sapphire Edition, purple image variation, SP for those reading the PSA label here. Graded just a PSA 9. Scott, in terms of rarity, in terms of Lewis Hamilton's best cards, if you look at cards, serial number 10 and under, so you're talking purple, red, and the pads, this is now the best graded Lewis Hamilton at that rarity. There's no other 9s. They're all 8s. And we've talked about before with condition, what happened with the set. It's the first one. A lot of them have the back peel and some have indents. This was just gorgeous. When I had this in hand, this went right from the castle. Literally handed this off in the state of Vermont. You and I met up, and because we did not want to ship this thing. Just wow! I'm so happy for Jim here.
Yeah, and I remember when I pulled it, because you can tell, especially with 2020, you can tell when you pull one of those cards, you turn it over. It's either got a big old clip in it or it doesn't. And I remember pulling this one. I was like, oh, this looks real good. This has got a shot. And you obviously, made sure it could do the best it could possibly do. And yeah, a 9 on 2020 Sapphire, purple out of 10. I mean, that's an absolutely insane grade. I mean, you just don't see it. You just don't see it. You really don't. And like you said, it's the only one 10 under, so purple, red, or pad, that's graded a PSA 9. So not only is it a pop 1 among the purple Lewis Hamilton image variations, but it's the only 9. I mean, this potentially, the way that grades can influence values on cards, this potentially competes with like a PSA 8 red variation out of 5, right? It's twice as common, but technically it's the PSA 8 red is a pop 2 and the PSA 9 purple is a pop 1. So this is going to go down as potentially one of Lewis Hamilton's best cards. This as a PSA 9, probably throw this in his top 100 cards ever. And that's saying something. So yeah, extremely valuable card. I don't want to get into, projecting what it could potentially go for and everything. But if you look at past sales, PSA 8s around 25 to 30,000. And you ultimately, as a collector, decide what kind of premium you place on it being not only a higher grade, but also a pop 1. So, yeah, very valuable card. And, again, shout out to not only Bryan, Q3 Cards, great job, prepping and submitting the card, but, shout out to Jim for sticking with it, because this is back when we did a 2020 Sapphire case. And through the first 6 boxes of that case, because I had broken it up like 3 boxes, and 4 boxes, and you'd have the opportunity to stay with your team. And he took the first 3. I think he got 1 Aqua winner in Abu Dhabi. He stayed with it for the next 3, and he got maybe 1 base portrait. So at this point, you're 6 boxes in on Mercedes in 2020 Sapphire. That's that's not cheap. And I was like, I don't know. I got a good feeling maybe the last 6 there was nothing. Maybe the next 4, you never know. And he decided to stick it out, and he made the right call, because he got this card. He also got this card right here. You can see on here, purple 142, which is beautiful. So you got a purple 142 winner in Great Britain, which he just won, so not a bad time to have that. And he got this Lewis. So I mean, just epic. Super happy for Jim. Massive card. God, it looks so good. It looks so good.
As I was just staring at it on my second monitor here, I know that the most obtainable one of these in Sapphire is obviously the Aqua, because there's 99 of them, and a lot of people, or the base, sorry. Well, out of the serial number ones, and a lot of people love the Aqua because it's kind of like a team color match. The fact that it's Lewis Hamilton's favorite color in purple, it just works.
It really does. And can you bring up the picture again real quick, because I do want to point something out that I was actually just looking at and noticing. I was like, oh wow, is like, you say the Aqua, obviously team color match, but what's really cool about this card specifically is that they kind of associated the team with a color, right? And for Mercedes, they chose like this bright aqua teal. So next to Lewis Hamilton's name, there's like those little cuts of like aqua. That's like a exact match of the tire cover that he's sitting on. So you even get like that extra little match in the card, no matter what color it is. And like you said, purple is a color that he has been known for. A lot of his helmets have had heavy purple influence. So yeah, it's it's a beautiful card. See, this is why I was saying I wish the 23 Sapphire image variations had purple. But wow. Oh, what a card. I mean, I'm just smiling just looking at it on the screen. It's absolutely gorgeous.
We go from a purple to a 2022 Max Orange Refractor here, but I did want to just give an update, because the last time out we were talking about the flow lines that PSA was having. This is a card of mine. I subbed it. I put it in free of charge, free shipping. They just fixed it today. You can see it on screen here. It's back into like the old new label holder, excuse me, with like the insert inside with the clear. And so they fixed it. We anything recently that's popped, I have not seen, and the new slab that has had those flow line issues, and in the top left or the top right corner. So I think PSA is going to continue to hopefully work, because I do like their newest slab the best, but they have to work out the aesthetics there. So
yeah, for sure. And I mean, I like this slab, the one that you have the Max in there. Like when they switched to this slab, I was really happy with it. Right. Like it feels heavy in hand. It's got a nice feel. Like it's kind of got that little double encasement. But I was very excited to move some of my cards into this very slab. And I did a quick reholder on some of my old ones that had the really annoying old thick ones, and PSA put them right back in thick ones. So now I gotta deal with that. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So I'll get that handled. I'm gonna get them hopefully in this slab we've got here, right? Because I think, like you said, I think they're really gonna have to take a look at that process. I don't think it's gonna be an overnight fix. And I personally am happy to have the slabs that you had that orange Max in. So
yeah, and for those of us that have OCD, like the fact that you never know what slab you're gonna get, and I love uniformity in my collection, and that's just one thing that drives me up a wall with PSA.
I wish they just
let you pick when you submitted.
Pick. Exactly. Just let you pick. And if they don't have any more stock of that slab, don't offer as an option or something, or I don't know, or they move to your second option. But yeah, no, it is what it is. Hopefully it gets remedied quickly. But yeah, I think it's a good step for them to have taken it off the market and work on fixing it. In the meantime, I think it's still a solid slab that we're going to be getting our cards in.
All right, Scott, my friend, 42 minutes. I figured we'd have quite a lot to talk about because we haven't recorded in about 2 weeks now. A lot's happened in the hobby, on the track. So we'll be back hopefully with some regularly scheduled episodes here. It's just fun to talk about this stuff. I love it.
It is, it's a lot of fun, and I missed it while we were gone. I get to talk to a lot of people, especially, being a breaker and kind of always having a little bit of a platform to talk about the races and everything when I'm breaking. But it's nice to do it in this format. So yeah, I'm glad we're back. Although now we get a weekend without racing, which is unfortunate. We get greedy and we get used to a race every weekend when we go through a triple header. But now we're going to get no race, and then we'll have 2 races in a row. And then we're going to go 3 weekends with no race, which is going to be absolutely brutal. But so real quick before we're done, could we
Oh, yeah, I do have one more.
At one last thing. I did want to talk about the Road to the Summer Break tournament challenge because guys, it's get pretty interesting here. So obviously we'd already known that Verstappen moved past Albon in the first round. Hamilton moved past Alonso. So, the matchups for this last round was Verstappen and Hamilton, the 1 seed against the 8 seed. Most people would imagine that Verstappen would win, but no, Hamilton comes out on top. Then we had Sainz and Perez, which was a 4 against 5 matchup that you'd think would be really close going into it. Perez just was nowhere this weekend, so Sainz easily moves on. Then in the all-time shock of the world, we had Esteban Ocon in the 15 seed, who had moved past Norris since Norris DNF, going up against Russell, and now Russell DNFs. So Ocon, everyone he's gone up against so far is DNF'd, and Piastri, beat Gasly. So now next weekend we have Hamilton against Sainz in Hungary, which based on recent races you'd think Hamilton would win that. But I'll let you guys know, Hungary is a track very similar to Monaco in terms of what it asks from the car. There's a lot of low-speed corners, and Ferrari was really good in Monaco. So I think Ferrari, in the hands of Sainz there against Hamilton will be a close matchup. And then we've got Piastri and Ocon, which you think Piastri should just walk all over him, which he should. But right now, I don't
If he
know.
DNFs,
I might put some money on Piastri to DNF in Hungary because Ocon has just. Can you imagine? Actually,
10-second penalty for Ocon.
If Piastri DNFs in Hungary and Ocon moves forward and goes up against, we'll just say Sainz, and then Sainz DNFs in Spa, and Ocon wins it all. If that happens, I'm going to give something else away because that'll just be hilarious, and all the brackets are going to be crushed. But yeah, so
I'm pretty sure my bracket's near dead. I might have Sainz left, and I might have Piastri, but yeah, I did not.
If you've got Hamilton or Piastri, a lot of people, well, I mean, most people had Max or Norris, realistically, but there's a decent amount of people who had Hamilton and Piastri, and those are the folks that are feeling pretty good about their chances right now. And
it was just a really fun thing to do. Hopefully you do more of this.
Brackets.
Love brackets. So, all right, now at near 50 minutes, we're gonna close the carbon cardboard doors here before we just keep talking and talking and talking. So yeah. So I guess at this point I'll throw it over to you, to my friend, to bring us home.
Well, we'll be back next week, but in the meantime, collect your cardboard and keep it carbon.